Let me show you how to paint a cardinal in a tree. So I'm going to use a mop brush with some light blue and white, and using an 11 by 14 canvas board, I'm doing back and forth strokes across the entire thing. Now before it dries, we want to blend in a couple other colors. So I'm going to take a little bit of light brown and blend in some different patches and also a little bit of dark green. It's okay to look a little bit muddy because I'm going to show you a blurred technique called bokeh today. That's B-O-K-E-H. So many different ways to do this, but here's an easy way. Get a couple different size pouncers and a clean mop brush. Now I'm going to start with my big pouncer and use some white and blue from the background. Make sure you have both together. And then in a couple different areas on your canvas, I'm just going to press down and twist a few times to make a few dots. You do not want to have a lot of paint on your sponge because then we're going to go in with the clean mop brush, and I made it a little bit damp. Most of the water is off, but I'm doing very light little brush strokes in circular motions around the circle to blur it a little bit. You're blending it into the background. You don't want to erase it completely, but you just want the hint of the circles there. Now I'm taking a medium pouncer with some of the light brown and white, and I'm going to do a couple more randomized circles. It's okay if they overlap in little clusters. And then same thing, clean up your mop brush again. Make sure it's just a tiny bit damp and very light circular motions. Now, I'm also going to take my tiny pouncer. Let's add a little bit of green in there. I'm using the dark green and white. I did little clusters all over the place, and then just dust them all into the background. It's okay if you're smudging a little bit of the paint around in the other areas of the canvas too. That gives it also a really nice look. I like to go back in with some brighter white. I have white and blue. Make sure your mop brush is clean, and then just dust it in there. Very light little circular strokes. Trust the process with this one. You may not like it right away, but it looks so much fun in the end. Now, taking a size 5 round brush, let's give the bird a branch to sit on. So I'm going to take some dark brown and a little bit of black and do a line starting in the bottom right-hand corner and curve it up to the left. That's just your core branch, so let's put your bird in next. Before doing any other branches, we want to make sure we leave room for him. First, leave a space for his legs, and we're going to do an egg shape. So the wide part of the egg is going to be at the top of the bird. I'm going to have him leaning to the left, and the pointed part of the egg is towards the bottom, and fill it in. I'm using a dark red for this just as a base coat, and give him a head, just a circle overlapping on the top of the egg. Fill that in, and you see how there's kind of points where the two meet. Make sure you do just a curved line to connect the two on both the front and the back. There we go. And at the pointed part of the egg, we're going to point that even more and do a thin line coming out with just light little brush strokes going down to make his tail. You can keep growing the tail that way, just light little strokes and fan it out towards the bottom. There's his tail. For a wing coming out, follow the curve of the top of him and just bring that out to a little point there on the back. And then to make him look like a cardinal, don't forget his head feathers called the crest. Follow the curve of his head out to a point at the top, goes up to the right, and just bring little lines feathered down towards the back of his head. Make sure that's curved. And then with a detail brush, add his beak. I'm just going to use red for this so he's all one solid coat. Bring the top line out just a little bit and fill it in. And there's a basic cardinal. Now taking a smaller round brush, because we have the cardinal in there, we're free to design our branches however we want without worrying about leaving a space for him. But I'm making sure all these little branches are kind of thin. I'm barely pressing down on my canvas. And I know cardinals are sentimental, so you don't have to do this, but I'm designing my branches coming out in different areas to curve around him to look like a heart, a very subtle heart. I still want it to look like a tree. But design it however you want. Just remember not to make your branches perfectly straight, and every little branch you bring out, make sure it has a slight V shape to it. There we go. I'm going to add one down here. Perfect. Keep it simple if you can. Now let's go back to the cardinal. Let's add some legs with a detail brush. Bring a line out from his belly that is tilted down to the left, a little thicker towards the body. Let's do 2 there. Don't forget a couple little talons curving around the branch. There we go. And then let's start his mask. I'm going back with my slightly larger round brush and a little bit of black paint. Make sure you section off the beak with a backward C and just bounce in some texture. Now the mask comes out to almost a triangle shape. The point is lined up with the top part of his beak, and then it goes underneath his beak. He has a little beard here. And see right around where his neck is, you're going to see another little tiny point like another triangle. So it forms on the right side like a little C around his cheek area. Let's bounce in a little bit more fluffy texture underneath his beak and define that point at the bottom a little bit more. There we go. Always lightly bouncing the brush to make it look feathery. Now taking my smaller round brush, I'm going to take some of that black paint and start adding some definition to the wing. I'm making sure I emphasize that wing shape. Also a couple strokes behind his head and neck on his crest. If you do too much black, don't worry, you can go back in with some of your dark red and blend it a little bit. But the more highlighting and shading you do, the more three-dimensional he's going to look. Now I'm also going to take some white now and add highlights anywhere I want this cardinal to be bright red. Acrylic craft paint especially, I've noticed bright red is a little bit transparent, so any strokes you do in white, see I'm going to even bounce in some feathery texture on his cheek. Anywhere you do the white, you're going to see the strokes, but you can turn that any color you want. So now I have the white in there, it's dry, I'm taking the bright red and just going right over top. Oh, I just got chills. Look, he's starting to look like a cardinal. If you do a couple coats of it, you can smooth it out a little bit, but anywhere you want really bright red, make sure you do white first. I'm gonna bounce in a couple feathery textures on his belly there. Don't forget his tail. And now let's go to his beak. What do red and yellow make? Orange, right? So cardinals usually have a reddish orange toned beak. So you can take some of that yellow with your red, since we already had red there, and start adding some highlighting to the top and the bottom of his beak. Don't forget to section off the top of the beak from the bottom with a little wiggly line. Don't do a straight line, but very, very thin wiggly line there. Add a little bit of white for highlights. Use some of the red and yellow for some shading towards the bottoms of each of the sections. Up to you how much detail you do, but that looks way more three-dimensional than just a solid red triangle. And then don't forget his eye. His eye is towards the back point of his top part of his mask. And just do a little circle. Don't forget a little bit of shine in the center there. Fix it up however you want, but there we go. I'm gonna point the top part of his mask. And now it all comes down to how much detail you actually want to do on the cardinal. I'm going to darken some of my shading and defining lines on my wing. I'm going to add more pops of white, like really thin lines, and fill that in with red. And then to tie him into the rest of the painting, let's take a cotton swab with some red that we used in the cardinal to add some berries. Just press down and pull up like a stamp. Cotton swabs usually have just the right size. And see how I'm doing them in clusters. Don't space them out evenly. It's okay for them to overlap. And it's also okay for them not to all touch the branch. You can draw little tiny lines coming off of the branch and connect them all, but I don't see the need to do that because if you're looking far away, you're not going to see all the little connecting lines. You're just going to see the red dots. Now a winter cardinal is what a lot of people asked for, so let's pretend it snowed. Taking my larger round brush now with some white paint, and see how I'm just lightly dabbing. I'm not just doing a straight line, I'm lightly bouncing it, and I'm doing little tiny sections with snow. Pretend the snow's falling, so the snow would be on the top part of the branches, but don't outline every single part. Just see how I have little sections of snow. There we go. So it looks like it snowed there. And this could be snow or shines in the berries, but take your detail brush with some white and do little tiny curves in each of the berries. This is optional, but really makes it pop. There we go. Now, and I can't help it, with all of my little figures and animals, I have to add little pops of highlights. This is just a tiny bit of white with my smaller round brush to make it look like his feathers are shining. Even add a little bit of shine to his legs to make them pop. And as a final touch, let's do a little bit of splatter snow with a flat brush. I watered down a little bit of white paint. I love the splatter snow, but I should have covered my cardinal so I didn't get too many splatters on him. So if you like that look, great. If not, make sure you cover him. I'm gonna just touch him up a little bit so he doesn't have so much snow on him. And there we go. That's how you paint a beginner snowy cardinal painting. I'd love to see how they turn out if you try it. And if you like this tutorial, follow me for more on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Happy painting!